Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you all the steps to make a quilt pattern called Dart. Now this is a free pattern from Robert Kaufman, and you can get it by clicking the link that's right below this video that says free pattern. Then you can print it off or you can look at it as we make it. And it's called Dart because it's got all these strips that make these pointy parts here and they look like little darts. All we need is one jelly roll, and I'm going to use this multicolored one from Kaufman called Violet Craft Modern Classics. And then we need 2 3/4 yards of a background. I'm going to use this nice solid white. Now our first step is to pick out 25 strips that we're going to use in the patchwork. So I've got duplicates in here. So I'm going to use one of every color, I think, and then I'll use 2 of some colors. So let's see, I definitely like all these bright ones here, and maybe we'll use a yellow. And the gray is not quite as bright. We'll probably leave this real light one out here, and maybe just one extra of these. So I'm going to count up 25 here. So there's the 25 that I'm going to use, and the extra strips from the jelly roll we can set aside for another project, or we can use them on the binding. Now each one of these strips is going to get cut exactly the same, and we want to iron each one first because we're going to have to make sure that there's not that little fold in the middle. So I'm going to iron some up, and then I can stack up several and cut them all at the same time. So I have 5 strips stacked up here because I'm comfortable cutting that many layers. Now we're going to cut a big piece. We're going to cut 30.5, and then a 6.5, and then a 3.5. So that adds up to 40.5 inches. So you do want to be a little bit careful when you start here that you leave yourself enough to get the whole 40.5 inches. Now for the background, we're going to cut some 2.5-inch strips, some of which are going to get subcut, and some 1.5-inch strips. And if you're going to make this, I would recommend that you print this off and follow along as you make your cuts, because it's no fun to get it cut wrong and have to recut. Once everything is cut, pull off all 3 pieces that are the same print, a 6.5-inch piece of background and a 4.5-inch piece of background, and head over to the sewing machine. So we're going to start with the smallest print, and then we're going to stitch the smallest, which is the 4.5-inch background, to that. And then I'm just going to finger press the seam allowance toward the darker print. Then I'm going to get the next size of the print, stitch it on, and again finger press that seam allowance toward the dark. One more background, again always towards the darker print, and now we'll just add this long piece. So now we've got one nice long strip here, and we're going to go ahead and do this same procedure with all of our jelly roll strips. Now before we go to the next step, which is stitching some of these pieces onto each end of these guys, I'm going to lay them out a little bit so I can decide if I want the darts to be each a certain color, like a pink one and a green one and a blue one, or I want to go from light to dark, or I want to have it alternating, just all random colors. So I'm going to just start laying some of these out and see what looks good color-wise to me. And I may try a couple different options, but this is kind of a fun step here. Here's my first layout. I've kind of grouped them so you can see the individual darts. This is not exactly the way the quilt will be made because there's going to be space between all of the strips, but this way we can see it going from lightest to darkest, and we could see a little bit of the shape of the dart. Now I've got them grouped kind of by color. So we've got kind of a blue dart, a pinky orange dart, and a green one, and then I put the lavenders and the grays up here. I really like this a lot better. So this is what I'm going to go with. Now keep in mind, you can switch your strips all around. That's the nice thing about quilting, is you get to pick the way you want to make your quilt. The next step is to add some background to these pieces so they will all end up, each strip will all end up being the same length. So we're just going to stitch these on. This guy doesn't get anything. This gets a little one, a medium, and a large. And then we'll go to the far end and we're going to add some pieces down there. And again, some of the strips don't get anything on this end. This one's already done. This gets a short. And you can already see that these are all going to end up exactly the same length. So I'm going to stitch the pieces onto the ends, and I'm going to work with one strip at a time. I'm going to stitch the pieces on and then lay it right back here on the table. So there, all the strips are all sewn together and they're right back in the same order, and they're all the same length. They're all 55.5 inches long. Now we're not going to sew them right next to each other here. We're going to put a light strip between them all. So let's go ahead and get that fixed up so we can stitch the whole top together. So we're going to start by taking these 1.5 inch pieces and sewing them into one really long piece. So I'm just going to use a 1/4 inch seam here. And make a really, really, really long piece. Once you've got it in one long piece, it's a good idea to iron it. So I ironed the fabric before I cut it, but I've still got this little fold from where it came off the bolt. So I'm just going to iron that flat, and then wherever the seam allowances are, I'm going to iron them to one side. Once you have it all ironed up, you want to cut it into 55.5 inch pieces. So the easiest way for me to do that is to mark my table. I've put 2 pieces of tape and they're 55.5 inches apart. Now this tape will come right off and it won't leave any residue, so you can put this almost anywhere. It's painter's tape, it's like masking tape. So I'm going to put this down here at the tape, smooth it down, and then you can either use your blade and cut it, or you can even use scissors and cut it. So there's the first piece. We'll just put that aside. Now we'll pull this down and get the next piece. Now once in a while, like right here, I have this laid out, but I'm going to have a little teeny piece there if I cut it right there. So what I'm going to do is slide it down so I don't have a little piece, cut this end, and then take it all the way down to the other end and cut off a little bit from the far end, and that way I won't end up with little teeny pieces here. Now these strips are going to go between all of these pieced units here. The easiest way to get these on is to take one, lay it along the edge here, stick a couple of pins in, and then we're going to stitch this onto here, then we're going to put this back. Then we're going to take another one and stitch it onto here. It's much easier to sew these all in pairs, then sew all the pairs together. So everything is lined up here. I'm just going to use a 1/4 inch seam and go all the way down. Now we're going to want to press the seam allowances toward the darker color. So we're just going to make it face that way and then just finger press all the way down here. So I'm just pulling it open and drawing my finger down that seam. And I'm going to iron these also, but it really helps if you finger pressed it first. Now once you have everything sewn into pairs, you take a pair of pairs. That's what I've got here. And we're going to pin those together and we're going to stitch down here. It's easiest to make the whole quilt by taking pairs of pairs. So I'm going to do this pairs of pairs for the whole rest of the quilt. Then I'm going to take 2 of those sections and stitch them together and keep repeating the process till I have 2 halves of the quilt. Working with smaller sections like this is a lot easier than trying to work with the whole quilt all at once. So we're only going to have to end up with 2 big halves by making smaller sections. Now that the quilt is done and it's on the machine, those stripes of colors look a lot better, and I think it's really improved because we've got that little bit between them all. Now for thread color, almost any color will work. I think I'm going to want to keep it light. And I think I'm just going to go with this very light silver gray because it's not going to show much. If I could find the end here, there we go. So this isn't going to show much in the white, and it's not going to show much in any of the colors. So that's what we'll go with. For the quilting pattern, I'm going to use this one that has all these little concentric triangles. It's very nice and geometric, and a lot of the prints in the quilt have sticks or circles or little triangles. So I think this will match the pattern really well. So here's the finished quilt. I'm really happy with the quilting. I'm happy with how all the strips look. They look so much better with that separation. So the quilting, I did these barely visible triangles here, which is great because it echoes all of the geometric patterns we have in all of the prints. And you can just see the shadows of it there. Now I used this red print on the back, so you can't see the quilting at all there, but the back is very interesting as well. It's 58 by 79, so it's a nice, generous throw size quilt. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the Dart quilt. We hope you enjoyed it. Now, we're going to have another giveaway. This is a little log cabin quilt that I made some time ago, and it's a great size for a bed runner, for a wall hanging. It's just made with 12 blocks. You can see the blocks right here. All beautiful abalone colored batiks. Very pretty even on the back side. You can see the pretty swirly quilting there. And it's very easy to enter the giveaways. All you have to do is click the link right below the video that says giveaway, and then put in your email address and your name, and you might be the lucky winner. Now, if you like our videos and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!